Hi there, my fellow teacher candidate. Why do you have such a long face?
Hello. I am just so frustrated about this whole backward design thing. I feel like it is common sense, but difficult to fully feel comfortable with. If the concept is so simple, why is everyone all up in a tizzy about how great it is? And why does it take 4 chapters in our textbook to define the concept of understanding? Do you get it?
It is not that hard. You are probably thinking too much into it. I think it is a great way to ensure that students really work towards the standards we are given as educators. What parts are you having trouble with?
All of them, I guess.
All of them. You guess. I do not know if I have time to explain the whole thing to you. Do you pay attention during class?
Yes, I do pay attention. Are you always so condescending? Please just give a quick run-through of what you know.
The first step in backward design is to identify the desired outcome. Thankfully, Texas makes this step easy for us. The texts at each grade level are determined. Furthermore, most districts provide a scope and sequence by which we must follow. Therefore, we know at any given time what concept should be taught. So to begin, we create a shared vision and focus on the big ideas. Again, this is the part that is provided, the text.
For today, we're going to be looking at some sixth grade math teaks. The student applies mathematical process standards to solve problems involving proportional relationships. The student is expected to represent mathematical and real-world problems involving ratios and rates using scale, factors, tables, graphs, and proportions. Solve real-world problems to find the whole given a part and the percent, to find the part given the whole and the percent, and to find the percent given the part and the whole, including the use of concrete and pictorial models, and to use equivalent fractions, decimals, and percents to show equal parts of the same whole. It's important to pay specific attention to the verbs used because this determines what level of mastery is expected. If you look at the beginning, the first teak, the A, the student is supposed to be able to represent, and in B, they're supposed to be able to solve the problems, and finally in C, they're supposed to be able to determine equivalent fractions, decimals, and percents.
After determining what is to be taught, which is often determined for us, next we have to determine how we will assess. What evidence will we use to determine if learning took place? In some districts, this too is predetermined. Oftentimes, students will be expected to pass a unit, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, or semester assessment to determine mastery. However, there are other more authentic ways to determine mastery. Performance tasks and informal assessments can be used throughout the teaching process to gauge student understanding and level of mastery.
Curriculum-based assessments are often designed at the district level. These assessments are written in advance and sample questions are provided to teachers to help them prepare students. These assessments are often given at 6-week, 9-week, and semester benchmarks to determine where students are and what strategies we need to use to prepare them for what's coming next. Informal assessments are also provided. One example is for students to work in partners to solve real-world problems, including ratios and rates. The teacher will use a checklist to determine the efficiency of this task. Students are able to learn from one another, and the teacher is able to pull small groups based on student need. The informal assessment checklist can be used to help teachers determine grouping and to determine which students need enrichment activities and which students need to have reteach activities. Lastly, performance tasks can be created for students to determine their level of understanding. In this example, students can work in teams to gather data from various fast food restaurants to determine which value meal is most and least popular. Students can represent their data in a chart or a graph. Students will have the opportunity to present this finding. When teachers use performance tasks, they're able to integrate content areas and see how much students are able to learn from one another and present to each other.
The final step of backward design is determining how the instruction will be provided. What instructional practices will be utilized to help students understand the content. Activities can be planned, best practices can be provided, and instructional technology can be integrated into the lessons. While planning, it is important to continually go back to the student expectations and be certain that each activity aligns to the expectation and will be a crucial piece to the overall understanding and impact of the assessment.
As planning occurs, it's critical that we remember all the students in our classroom and what practices must be performed to keep their interest and meet them where they are academically while also building on their understanding. Technology resources can be found to keep students engaged, to enrich, and to reteach. We also have to be mindful of what materials are available and what materials need to be purchased to make the curriculum more valuable. As we're planning, we'll be thinking about direct teach lessons, small group lessons, differentiation based on student needs. So it may be important that you might teach a lesson or a unit this year that's going to be different from next year based on the kids that are in your class. You also have to think about modifications and accommodations for ESL and special ed students and how you can help them be most successful. There's a paradigm shift with how we plan and provide instruction to students. As educators, we often think about what fun lesson we've done or what idea we found on Pinterest, and we try to determine which expectation we can cover using these lessons and ideas. In backward design, the paradigm shifts and forces us to begin with the end in mind. It makes it more difficult to lose sight of the big picture when we are driven by results. Basically, backward design is when you begin with the end in mind. If you're familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders, this is habit 2. You must first determine what it is you want students to know. Those are the standards or the texts. Next, you build the assessment to the depth and complexity based on the standards chosen. The assessment has to be a true reflection of what you're asking students to master. That's the assessment piece. Lastly, you're going to be creating the instructional piece, the best practices, the lessons, the technology integration, and all the fun stuff. This is the instruction. What sets backward design apart from the typical approach is that it forces teachers to be totally focused on the expected outcomes. In most cases, especially in elementary, teachers find a fun lesson and try to make it fit into the standards or curriculum. While this may have been effective in the past, with the new depth and complexity written into the standards and the state assessment, it's become more apparent that we have to focus on the big picture and think about the outcomes.